Boom. What's up, everyone? Welcome back. How are you guys doing on this Tuesday night? GitHub. Everyone who is anyone and their grandma and their auntie, y'all got a GitHub, right? At least if you are either learning how to code, already are a developer in one way, shape, or form, or like there's even people who use GitHub who are like artists for I don't understand why they do, but anyway, you guys get the point, right? And everyone who, at least my guys, my clients in DD, you guys all know how much I harp on the GitHub thing, right? But what actually makes a good GitHub, other than just having things look good on it and just stuffing it full of as much code as you possibly can? And for those of you guys who don't know what GitHub is I guess you could call it a like social media of sorts, although it's really not. GitHub is a website. It's a web application from which people, users, so you and me, can go in, create an account, and host code. So the literal source code for projects that you create on this website. All right. Now, GitHub's primary purpose is twofold. One is to be able to kind of showcase your code to other people, because that's what everyone who's like, actually, look at the cool code that I wrote. That's what all the cool kids are doing. But and also not just for clout too, right? Like you actually have people who employers legitimately go and look at your GitHub. In fact, a lot of times, especially if you're applying for a job as a software developer at certain places, majority of these places are going to ask you for the link for the URL for your GitHub account. Okay. And they go in there and they go and suss out your code to see, like, you know, one, if you can actually write code, and two, what kind of stuff you wrote, what kind of like expertise you have, what kind of experience you have in other places. So aside from being like a cloud thing and a place to showcase your stuff, and also a place that, you know, kind of as like a trophy case for your code, of which you can use to demonstrate to employers that you know what the hell it is that you're claiming to know. But also, to the second fold, and the second part, which a lot of people don't realize, at least when they're first starting to learn how to code, or to learn to go on the path of becoming a software developer, is that source control or version control. Okay. Now, we're not here to talk about version control and the use of version control, or even really what that is tonight. I'm going to focus this stream on the first thing. So using GitHub as a means to show to the world and anyone, right, other developers and prospecting employers and even clients that you could get if you're a freelance person, that you do indeed know how to code. And also to like how to do it the right way. Okay. And the title is The Perfect GitHub Portfolio or something like that, right? But truth be told, guys, there is no such thing as a perfect GitHub portfolio unless you've written every single software on the planet, which I don't think there's enough time in the human life span to do so. But we're going to try to get you guys as close today as possible to that. All right. So I have on the top of my head at least like 7-ish things, and you know, you could remove 1 or 2 things from this list and you could add some stuff to this list too, but approximately 7 things that I think everybody should have and just to cover their baseline on your GitHub portfolio. Okay. And none of these things are really in particular order. All right, guys. So I'm just going to go off of like, off of what I think these things should be. And so don't put them in like order of preference. Okay. Or don't think you should do this first, that first. I mean, it really doesn't matter what order you're doing these things in, but I do think that every single person should have these couple things. All right. So the first thing is, I think that every GitHub portfolio should have a very, 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 very basic website code for a website on there. Okay. And not a whole full-fledged web application, but just a website. Okay. And what do I mean by very basic? And I can explain why I think everyone should have this, but by very basic, guys, I really just mean a website that's comprised of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay. Basically, boomer web dev. as simple as it gets. Like it's from the 1990s to the early 2000s. So why am I recommending this? I recommend this, my friends, because this shows to whomever it is, whether that be an employer, other people who potentially might be working with you, whoever, it shows that you understand web development at its most basic level. And if you're writing the code, it also shows that you have the ability to get your hands dirty and you can implement, update, or even fix some web code at the very basic level, at its core, meaning not depending on any kind of frameworks or template builders, all on your own. Okay. Now, this is like a skill that I think that very like if you're a Zoomer, probably few Zoomers are really good at like doing stuff like CSS. Okay. And I mean, the reason for that is because, why would you, right? Why would you get good at something like CSS when you could just use template builders and stuff like that? True. Very true. But when things get down to the nitty gritty, and let's just say you have to actually edit CSS that was generated from some kind of template builder or some kind of bootstrapped code or software that you used, a lot of people can't do that. And there's a lot of times, especially in, enterprise software development, where these companies, they'll take this template building stuff and they'll customize it on their own. And that is the time to shine for you if you're actually good at things like basic web development. Okay. So that's the reason why I think that should be on there. And it's not too hard to do, guys. Everybody can piece together a basic, at least if you're a developer. And in fact, if you're learning to code, this is probably one of the first things that you're going to learn how to do. Okay. Either this or probably something like Python, but piece together a very, very basic, not terribly looking, at least don't make it look terrible. Okay. Make it look decent. But very basic vanilla website, just comprised of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Put that on your GitHub, wash your hands, call it a day, and walk away. All right. Now, another thing that I think that it should be a staple in everyone's GitHub should be some kind of like basic CLI or really just some kind of console application that written in some kind of scripting language, so like Python or Ruby, whatever. You could pick whatever you want. Use Go if you want. But this repository that you have, this code, this project, this should be something that's useful, or some kind of like useful piece of software that you can do something with in real life, right? I'll give you guys some examples, but like the reason is it shows that you can actually make something useful with a basic scripting language. Okay. Now, pretty much everything you make, someone's probably already made it before and they probably made it better. Right. But if you can make something like that, or if you can't, then you should learn how to and do it and throw that puppy on your GitHub. Right. Some examples of this, guys, is like a Python script that takes in a bunch of Excel files, reads something or does something with whatever information it takes in from the Excel files, and then stores it on a database somewhere, or the inverse of that. Okay. Think about something that takes some kind of input, does something to the input, and then some kind of output happens to it. Something that's actually usable, right? And you might actually end up using this on your own several times. So this is a lot better than a lot of stuff that people put on their GitHub portfolio, where it's just like when they're learning how to code, and it's just like they're really just like going off of some kind of like guide or something that's like, hey, here's a hello world in Python. All right. This is a lot better. This is probably going to take like maybe just a little bit longer to do, and it'll help you learn. It also shows that you have real world competency and that you can actually make something that does something actually important. Rio says, how often do you find people who can't do web dev at the fundamental level? Dude, a lot more often than you think, man. A lot more often than you think. Especially like being decent at CSS. I'm not good at CSS. I'm terrible at CSS. But people who are like decent at stuff like CSS, those people are like a dime a dozen, my friend. All right. So something else, guys, I think that everyone should always have some sort of enterprise level application. And this can be very basic, right? but something built with some kind of enterprise level software like C# and .NET, Java and Spring, Swift, maybe like an iOS application or an Android application. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel here, okay? It can be something kind of like lame and stupid, but this just covers another area of software development that you just at least need to be able to show that you can do the very basics in, okay? I don't really have a whole lot to say about that one. I think that's as like simple as it gets. Like literally just make an iOS app, call it a day, and shove it on there. And yeah, a lot of places require enterprise level application development. So like this is a base that you don't want to skip out on. This is definitely something you want to add on there. It'll be a good learning experience for you if you're not used to dealing with like large object-oriented programming languages and frameworks like .NET. And fact of the matter is, like, honestly, guys, most large companies, they use stuff like this. So they actually don't expect you to know this kind of stuff. They actually probably only expect you to know like Python or regular stuff like that. But if you can at least show that you have at least touched it before and you've done a little bit of it, you can at least make your own application from scratch, even if it's like a, you know, the most basic thing ever. This is going to put you ahead of the line of all those other people who don't have that. All right. That's very important, especially, you know, as someone who used to work as a .NET developer for almost a decade. Any of those jobs that I applied to, after the first one, it was like they already knew that I had .NET experience, and I was like, whew, oh my God, give this man a job. But any other people that we would hire on to the team, not including me, any other people that we were at least interviewing with or thinking about hiring onto the team, if they had at least done like something very minimal in .NET and it was on their GitHub, it's like, all right, at least we don't have to teach them everything about .NET, including the very basics, right? Like they can at least spin up an application through a template builder, through the .NET like Hello World template builder on their own. And that just allowed us to know it's like less stress and time that we have to spend on these people. And that's about it. Cody says, don't do it. You'll get full-blown AIDS for mobile development. Yeah, mobile development it's not my cup of tea. So in that case, you know, just do something like in .NET. Make a e-commerce store. I think that's like Cody, you know Cliff? Young Cliff in DD, he made something like that, make an e-commerce store, and it was pretty good. It's pretty good. Apple be like, oi, mate, you got a license for that app? Yeah, they do. They do be like that. One thing you can do in .NET, though, Cody, is you can actually use .NET, and there's this thing called, God, how do I forget this? This thing called, now I have to Google this, guys. Now I have to Google this. Cross-app platform app. Xamarin. That's right, Xamarin. And you can basically take your .NET code and you can export it into executables for both like Android and also iOS. And you could also do that if you wanted to for a Mac like desktop or a Windows desktop without really changing much of anything. Xamarin allowed all that to happen, so that is pretty useful, mate. Pretty useful. So what else, guys? What I add on there? If it were me, I would add and create just literally any sort of Web3 application with a smart contract included in it. The reason for that is because like very few people out there have experienced Web3, and even if you're not interviewing for a Web3 company, which I know a lot of you guys want to do, and you know, rightfully so, but even if you're not in the Web 2 world and the regular software development world, if they see that you have that you've gone out of your way to do something new and inventive, I think for me that's just a bonus. In fact, if you were applying to work for my place and I saw that would be a big old green check from me, Chief. And if people think if you're gonna have some kind of guy who's like, he wrote Solidity code, this guy's probably into those crypto things, we're not going to hire him. Well, then you don't want to work there anyway, right? What else, friends? Okay, so this can be very basic, all right? This can be very basic, and people might not like this, but I'm going to stick to it. I think that everyone should have some sort of and this is going to be a non-project, not like a complete project itself, right? Or rather, the project itself is to just demonstrate some sort of large, complex, we could say studious algorithm in an object-oriented programming language. Okay, kind of like if you were taking a class in college about theoretical computer science, literally algorithms. I took that class. It was not fun, but it also wasn't terrible. And why do I think that you guys should do this? I think that this shows that you took the time to learn something that's kind of complex, like whatever algorithm was. Maybe it's a search and sort algorithm or a bubble sort algorithm, whatever. Even if you're never going to use it in the real world, this shows that you took the time to at least learn something that's complex like that involves theoretical computer science. And just, in all honesty, guys, even though we have all these libraries and functions that we can call already, if you can build some kind of algorithm like that from scratch, there's really nothing wrong with you. Like there's nothing to harm you except for maybe the time that you spent to go and build something like that, right? It's only going to help you learn more. It's only going to make you look more studious. And putting this on your GitHub portfolio, guys, this is going to cover the basis of the chance that if you go and interview at a place and it's like a super traditional, super trad type of company, and this is the kind of stuff that they care about, all right? Might not be the kind of place that you actually want to work at, but hey, let's just say they're offering like $180,000 a year and it's your first job. You're probably still going to want to work there no matter what, right? So that will cover that base. Even if you never use it in the real world, I still think that's something that everyone should have on there. Yes, Cody, you might have to check out .NET, my friend. Michael James says, does free code camp data structure and algorithms count? I mean, it doesn't matter where the algorithm come from. You could literally just go and you could go to Google and you could search top 10 most studied computer science algorithms and pick one of those and implement it in something like C# or Java or even C or C++. Probably not C, probably do C++, but in some kind of like larger object-oriented programming language. Just because. Just to cover that base, my friends. Even if you never use it in the real world, I made sure I said that like 6 times because I know that most likely you'll probably never use it in the real world, but it shows something, okay? And we're trying to cover all gaps here for all different areas so that you have a portfolio that's strong enough to matter where you're going to apply for a job at or what kind of client that you might be acquiescing. They can see that you've done it all. That you're a Renaissance man. You are, yes, you are indeed a distinguished Renaissance man, yes. What else, guys? I think everyone should have a basic template-built website on their GitHub portfolio. Kind of a no-brainer there. It's not super hard to do. It won't take super long. But this just shows that you have competency in learning how to use template builder software. And a lot of places use this template building software. A lot of places use bootstrapping. So if you never use it, let's say you're all the way on the handmade side, all right, and that's good. A lot of people aren't in that camp, okay. But if you're 100% on that side and you're completely lacking the ability to use template building software, which by the way I was about 2 years ago, I hadn't hardly used much template building software at all until I made the developer direction website with Michael Z, and that was my first time. And it's supposed to be easy to use, but when he was showing me how to use it to even just generate this code, I was like, man, I would rather just sit here and just handwrite out all this stuff instead. Because if it's not something you're used to, it's going to take a while to get accustomed to it. Okay. And a lot of places use that. A lot of places value that skill set. So if you add that on there, that's yet one other base that you guys have covered. All right. A bowl of stew says, what about game projects like Unity, Unreal, Godot, Phaser, Game Maker, etc.? I wouldn't say that a game project covers a like baseline of something. Depending on what your game project is comprised of, it might actually cover several of these baselines that I'm going over. To be honest with you, it'll probably cover like 2 or 3 of the things that we're talking about in here, if not more. But if it doesn't, I don't think that having a game project itself, I would say, is a necessity to make a perfect portfolio. However, if you have all your other necessities covered, there is nothing wrong with putting something like that on there In fact, I would say, why not go ahead and do it? Because the point is, guys, like the get your bases covered for your portfolio, and then once the basis is covered for it, then from there you can go on and add as much quality. Key here is quality code and projects as you possibly can. That's what you want to do. But there's nothing as far as that being a baseline. I would say no, not for a baseline. RPG Maker. Sam says just code Snake, bro. That actually wouldn't be a bad thing to put on there. Would it cover baseline? I don't know. And finally, guys, the last thing that I would say just to cover a baseline is, and by the way, one of your previous projects, if you have all of the other baselines covered so far, might actually have already implemented this. But I think that everyone should have a standalone project itself that demonstrates you using an API, and the entirety of the project is surrounded around the use of an API. Okay, just meaning that you can show that you know what an API is, how to interact with it, and that you at the very least can do that for a profession in a I don't want to say the next word, manner. Okay. Now, why APIs, guys? Why something that's based on an API? Because no matter what you're doing in code, eventually you're going to have to touch it. And it's not like it's the hardest thing to do, but I mean, there's a lot of people who've never there's a lot of people that have been stuck in like some corner of software development and might probably have never even interacted with an API before. All right. So if you haven't had that included on your GitHub portfolio, I would most certainly add it, because it's a necessity. It is a necessity in order to be a 5-star developer. That's it. Okay. So one thing I want to do for you guys, we talked about getting the bases covered. Okay. I want to show you guys what a professional GitHub portfolio actually looks like. I'm picking someone who was in DD. I mean, technically, they're still a member of DD. They just have a big boy job now. But this guy, if anyone you guys know, if you guys are in developer direction and you guys are watching, you guys all know who Aurelian is, right? If not, well, guys, this is one of my clients who has done a very, very, very good job. And obviously, he's working professionally as a developer. You might say that part of the reason is because he has such a stacked GitHub. But one thing I want you guys to pay close attention to on here, right? Now, it says that he has 13 repositories. He actually has a lot more than 13. Most of them are private, and you can't see them because he's actually developing proprietary code. But check out the landing page, guys. If we go to the overview right here, he has his own README for himself, all right, which is important, all right? He's got a nice little quote. He's got a quote about himself specifically, or a statement about himself specifically in regards to software development. So it's a software developer that's passionate about everything FOSS, GNU, and Linux related, all right? He's got his emails. You guys go ahead and spam his email inbox if you so choose to. Basic information, all right? He's got a picture of himself, so you guys know that he's a real person, not a shadowy supercoder. But notice how from the second you get to his landing page on GitHub, it looks clean. It looks nice. It looks professional. It doesn't look bogged, right? Now let's actually go into one of his repositories. So Mundispot. And speaking of Mundispot, we actually use Mundispot in Developer Direction Telegram, which, by the way, my friends, if you are actually interested in learning how to code, we do a top-notch job at Developer Direction. There is a link in the description box. You guys can go and sign up for the email list for the next time we got something come out. But back to the transmission. So everything's clean here, okay? His files are all ordered nice and neat. But one thing that most people don't do is here. The landing page for this repository itself, and all of your repositories should be like this. First of all, he has change logs with notes in it about everything that he does, right? Aside from that, he's got some basic description on what this code does, all right? And that's the most important thing. If you can't come to this landing page of a repository and then see a README file that's clean and concise and easy to read, then someone's actually going to have to take the time to go in and look through all your stuff and be like, well, would have been so much nicer if they actually would have made that known from the beginning. And especially if you're dealing with somebody like a recruiter or you're hiring, sorry, not hiring, you're interviewing in a place or you're the one doing the hiring, you don't want to have to go and snoop through every single freaking file, right? Kind of the same thing as if you have a resume, guys. You don't want to give somebody a resume that's like 5,000 pages long. They're not even going to read it because they're going to look at it and they'll be like, ugh, and they're going to throw that away. Why waste my time? You want it to be clean, clear, and concise. There's a theme in software development and computer science. Clean, clear, and concise. You guys always want to keep that theme no matter what you do, whether it's writing code or literally uploading projects to your GitHub portfolio, okay? So let's take another example here, and then another project that he has. I think that I know that was a good one with a README file. Is it this one? No, same thing here too. Notes to himself. We just want to remind the spot. His app. Hold on, fellas. Hold on, fellas. There's one in here that he's got like a GIF. A GIF. How do you guys say that? Do you guys say GIF or GIF? Well, I'm looking for that. New Horizon says, I wish you could still play the old school theme park. Too bad the cloak speed of the game was hard tied to the CPU speed. It was such a good time. I'm not sure I know what game that is, mate. Yes. All right, guys, check this one out. So in here is a GIF that shows how to run the code in this repository. And then is in the remainder of the GIF, and this actually might be a video too, but regardless whether you put a GIF or a GIF or a video, going that extra step just makes it easier for all parties involved, either you coming back to view it yourself to know how this worked, or people interviewing you, or places that you're interviewing at coming to look at you and to hire you on as someone on a team. All right. So notice that everything in this site is clean, guys. All right. You want it to look really good. And honestly, guys, I'm not even following this rule by myself. I have in the past. You guys want to put an actual picture of yourself there as well, okay? Especially if you're out going out of the way to hire to interview places, you want to put an actual picture of yourself. If you want to be a Shadowbow supercoder later on, do that after you get your first job. All right, then you can change the picture. But the time being, definitely put a picture of yourself, because it adds an extra touch of being personal with these people, and then they're gonna know that you're not just some kind of like cave dwelling neckbeard, even though that might be what they want. But most likely it's not what they want. They most likely want you to be able to interact with clients as well. So if you can actually show yourself on there, that is an extra bonus, right? Theme park, nice. GIF with hard G, GIF, GIF. I've heard it both ways, mate. I don't even know anymore. That and the theme hospital were amazing. GIF, not the peanut butter, GIF. If you say GIF, your rainbow, says Christian Soto. Perhaps. Speaking of, DD, we got a webinar that I'm negative 7 minutes late to. So I am out. I hope that helped. Whoever it is out there, a bowl of stew. Okay, all right. I'll answer this last one. What about Dockerizing your code or using Ansible for dependencies for your starter projects? I mean, look, any of that other stuff that you want to put on there, that's fine. Are you meaning that including those in the projects themselves? At the very least, in the README, put instructions on how to add all those dependencies and all that other stuff, right? So like npm install, whatever, blah, 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 blah. All right, goodbye for the second time. I actually do the run because I'm late to the webinar. So I will see you all yet another day. See ya.